Hey, welcome to Mind Your Own Biz, the podcast where we help small business owners with big dreams build something authentically you. I'm Alicia Yervis, educator, marketer, designer, nacho enthusiast, and your big sister in business. I'm excited for us to have this cozy spot to chat. Each episode, we'll tackle candid conversations, actionable tips, and a few fun tangents to help you run your business your way. Because business is always personal, no matter what anyone says. So grab your iced coffee or those nachos and let's get started. Hello. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Alicia Yervis, and I am your host for Mind Your Own Biz. This is my brand new podcast. This is officially episode number 1. And we're just going to wing this because this podcast is something that I have wanted to do for freaking ever. Ever since, back in the 1980s, I'm an 80s kid. My Fisher Price tape recorder, microphone, and headphone combo. I'm sure many of you had the same exact thing. Ever since I had that, I've wanted to have my own little radio show. And during my brief stint in college, we will talk about that later. I worked at the radio station and for a little while, and that was really fun. And so this is the continuation of that, and I'm looking at this as being an experiment. It is kind of going to be a variety show because I have ADHD and I like variety. And I'm figuring it out as I go. I am using a very basic mic. I'm using my laptop. I'm using Zoom to record this. I'm sitting in my room. I don't have a fancy studio. I don't have fancy equipment. I have my my headphones that came with my phone. And we'll see how this goes. In the future, maybe I'll get a little fancier and more complicated. But in the interest of taking imperfect action and getting stuff done instead of getting something done perfectly, done is better than perfect. So here we go. After a million years of wanting to do this, we're ripping the Band-Aid off just under the gun at the end of 2024. So, for those of you who don't know me, let me tell you a little bit about myself, who I am, and kind of my entrepreneurial journey thus far. So, I'm a Jersey girl. I have always been creative and artistic, always way more interested in music class, art class, um, you know, drama club, community theater, dance class, all of that stuff. Always way more interested in that than, math. I still can't math, by the way. Uh, and just always had a wild, and active imagination, always daydreaming, always doodling, always, putting on a show in the living room. Um, little foreshadowing there, perhaps. And uh, yeah, I was just always involved in the arts and always involved in creative, fun stuff. And I graduated high school and, did what I was quote unquote supposed to do, which was going to college. And went to college. I picked the wrong college, but that's a story for another episode. Uh, and just kind of was lost for a significant amount of time. Um, Same thing there. I gravitated towards the tour choir and the music department and, playing piano in the rehearsal rooms when no one was in there and painting classes and sculpture and art history and seeing plays and fortunately that particular school was only a 20-minute train ride from Times Square. So I was going into the city on my own and seeing shows a bunch and having this newfound independence. And that was kind of what I was trying to focus on in school. Not so much the school part. Um, and I just picked the wrong school. I went there for the wrong reasons, and I never really found my place. I didn't have many friends. It just, honestly, like, people who have these amazing college experiences, like, more power to you. I am happy for you. I think that's excellent. And I'm not knocking college. I just feel like college is not the only path. And if you are going to go to college, I think it's important to choose the college that's the best fit for you. And if it's not the best fit, to try another one or to figure out, your next moves. And so basically, my college experience eventually became, me having a dorm room and a meal plan and a 20-minute train ride to Times Square. My like I'm trying to remember now the chain of events, like so much happens and you're like, wait, what happened before what? Blah blah blah. Okay, so I finished 2 years in college, and as I was heading into my third year on holiday break, I fell down some stairs at a friend's house and I broke one ankle and twisted the other or sprained the other at the same time. And thus began a very uncomfortable few weeks of getting casts and like air cast things and crutches and a motorized cart and all kinds of shit. Oh yeah, I'm gonna curse on this podcast, so just letting you know. Um, all kinds of stuff like that, trying to figure out how the frig I was going to navigate the second half of my third year in college. Oh yeah, so I technically completed 2.5 years, but like yeah, 2.5 years, but like that final half year, my heart and mind was just not in it. I was just preoccupied with everything that New York City had to offer. That was where all my friends were. I was in the early phases of my rent head experience, which I'll talk about that in another episode. That's a whole other thing. If you're a rent head, I want to hear from you. Um, this was in when was this happening? This was in 2002-ish. Um, that I had injured myself, and so basically had to work with the college to have them change where my dorm was going to be so that it was accessible so I could use my cart to get there. And like I said, I really didn't have friends at school, and I'm like driving this cart around, and it was not a super accessible um, campus, um, and just feeling more and more, excluded from stuff and just closed off, or not excluded, but isolated, um, and just feeling depressed and, just really hating everything. And like I said, I was not um, really focused on, you know, much of anything. And I think I have my timeline a little screwed around here, but the point of the story is that I was already not focused on school. Then I had this injury that only made it worse. And, I was just like basically done at that point. And so, came back from a break and decided, I had decided, I think a couple weeks or a couple months prior to this, but I decided I was going to leave school and I decided I was going to eventually um, move to New York and try to audition for some shows and try to make it as a Broadway actress. Now, I had always been involved in community theater. New Jersey has this thing called All Shore Chorus. I was in that. Alto one, by the way, mezzo soprano, alto one. Um, and I went into it super naive, like super, super naive, but it was an adventure for sure. And I decided I was going to do this. So now it's like, okay, how the frig do I tell my parents? And my mom and I still joke about this to this day because I basically brought her to Chili's on break, and this is while we were figuring out, the second half of my junior year in college, like, all right, when was move-in day? Like, how are we doing this? Um, and we went to Chili's, and I'm like about to throw up, and I'm like, okay, I have something to tell you. And, of course I could see my mom's like face, like, oh, what does this mean? And I basically told her everything it wasn't. I'm like, I'm not on drugs, like I'm not going to jail, I'm not pregnant, like all these things. And I'm like, but um I am going to leave school and I need to move back home for a bit. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to save up and I'm going to move to New York to try to audition and be on Broadway. And like, I just said it like that. Like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this thing. Like, oh God. And to my mom's credit, she took it very well. Was very calm. That's why it was important to tell her in a public place. Um, no, she really took it really well. And we told my dad later, he took it really well. And it was just kind of like I knew that they knew I didn't love college, but I don't think they had any idea that I was going to leave college. Because we had all worked hard to go I was the first their first kid to go to college. I was the oldest, and going through the whole application process and touring schools and like all that stuff, because that's what you're supposed to do. You graduate high school, you apply to colleges, you go to college, blah blah blah. And again, I'm not giving college a bad rap in general. I know many, many people, some of my closest friends had the best college experience, made some of their best friends there. Their degree was worth it, all of that. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it's not the only pathway. And something that I have learned in my life, which I will talk about all throughout this podcast, is my pathway is a freaking curly Q. Let me tell you. Curly Q. My therapist and I talk about this all the time. Yeah, P.S. I'm in therapy. You should go to therapy. Everyone should go to therapy. It's the best thing ever. I'll talk about that later too. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. Um, this podcast is going to feature many tangents as well because of the ADHD thing. You get all these bonus side stories, okay, guys? Just go with it. So I just don't think college is the only pathway. And so I left college, I moved home, and went back to waitressing tables at a couple places, working on saving some money, and eventually, summer of 2023, no, lies, summer of 2003, sorry, um, uh, I moved to Brooklyn. I was 20 years old at this point, and I moved to Brooklyn, and yeah, I moved there in July 2003 in Borough Park on the edge of Park Slope. And myself and a roommate were nannying for a couple families, trying to make some money and go on some auditions. And I did go on some auditions, some. And it was very figure it out as you go. I did not have a professional headshot. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have anything like that. I just was like, using Backstage magazine and, this was like social media didn't exist yet. I had a cell phone for like 5 seconds and then I don't know what happened. I probably ran out of money and couldn't use it anymore or something. But anyway, um, Brooklyn was a disaster, in case you were wondering. Like, spoiler alert, Brooklyn was a disaster. It was fun, but again, I was doing the same thing where I wasn't really focusing on the matter at hand, which is trying to audition and get out there. Like I went to some and that was good and I got experience, but mostly I was nannying and going to see Rent for $20 lotto tickets in the front row. All my rent heads out there listening, no. And also just the freedom of having, your subway pass and everything is 5 seconds away, and just roaming around the city and going to all these shows and events and concerts and restaurants and just, walking and exploring. Like it was such an adventure to the point that, like, as I'm recording this right now, how the frig old am I? I'm 42. And I think of myself as a 20-year-old doing all of this, and I'm like, who the hell do you think you are? Like, get back inside. It is way too late for you to be out. Like, what do you think you're doing? Like, guys, I used to be coming home from events and, taking the subway home at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning by myself. And my subway stop was like 10 or 11 blocks away from my apartment. Um, and it was also like, it wasn't like I lived in Midtown, so I still had to be on the subway for like, whatever, 40 minutes or something till I got home. Anyway, I just think of these things that I did back then, and I can't believe I'm the same person that did all these things. Thank God I like did them okay and nothing happened. Like, but me and my friends had many of the late night crazy ass adventures, you know, running all over the city. And we would go to all these gigs for all the actors that were in Rent, and kind of like how people follow the Grateful Dead around. We're like following these Broadway actors around to their different shows and stuff, and forming some nice friendships with some of them. Some of them are still my friends to this day, some of these performers. Hope to have some of them on as guests in the future. So that's cool and that's fun, but the point of the matter is we were running out of money fast. Oh, I forgot to mention, before I moved to Brooklyn, like I was waitressing and all of that stuff. I also took out a loan, a personal loan for $5,000 from my bank. I never took out a loan before. I willy-nilly applied for some like thing online in 5 seconds and a check came. And like I was like, holy freaking shit. Um, and all I was doing was spending that money to buy tickets, buy food, yes, pay rent, but like that was less important than having fun. And it was a little bit like kid in a candy store, you know? And I had absolutely no idea how to use credit cards, what is the word? Responsibly. Made a lot of mistakes during this time. A lot of mistakes. And eventually, surprise, surprise, ran out of money. Power started getting shut off in the apartment. Like I said, I think I lost the use of my cell phone. Um, all these kinds of things were happening. And had to borrow money from a friend, from a grandparent, from my parents, like it was bad. I was embarrassed. I was being stupid. But I was young and I was stupid, you know? Um, and so eventually, uh, after this experience. It was basically a 6 month experience. Um, we were like, we can't do this anymore. Like we have to leave, we have to move home. And so my roommate went back home to where she was from, and I moved back home to the Jersey Shore with my tail between my legs. And I was sick of living on mustard sandwiches. Like, that is the truth. We literally were having mustard sandwiches. We had no power. It was terrible. Like, I love Rent and the whole starving artist thing, but like, this was ridiculous. And I was just a dumb kid who was on this giant adventure with no clue, but like a big, stubborn ambition. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. That part has stayed with me, though, I have to say. Um, and moved back home. Now, when I moved back home, so this was moved back home over the holidays. in 20 or 2003. So January 2004 was the lowest point in my life that, at that point. And I was just very depressed. I had absolutely no money. I ruined my credit. I didn't have a college degree. Like, I didn't have a car. Like, everything was going wrong for me. I had no direction. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I just knew, okay, I'll probably have to go back to waiting tables and all of that kind of thing. And then one day, my mom, uh, she told me, hey, the box office at Count Basie Theater in Red Bank is looking for, uh, they're hiring. And I'm like, hmm. I mean, I had been there for a couple shows and stuff, but I didn't know anything about working in a box office. I didn't have like experience like that. I had customer service experience from, waiting tables. I worked at an ice cream place when I was younger, things like that, but nothing about working, in an office like that. However, I thought it would be something cool. And it was nearby and like that could be kind of interesting. So I applied and I got an interview pretty quickly and I was hired. And that was early February 2004. And that was basically the catalyst for many, many, many things in my life. So was rent, actually, which will tie together probably in a future episode. I'll talk about how all of that um, came to be in terms of, if this hadn't happened, then that wouldn't have happened, and this needed to happen for that to happen, all of that kind of stuff. But basically, I started working in the box office at this historic venue in New Jersey. It was built in 1926, I believe, about 1,600 seats. And they would do like 200 shows a year. And it would be a mix of concerts, comedy shows, plays, um, dance shows, movies, all kinds of things. And in 2 months, I was promoted to senior box office rep, which is kind of like a key holder position. And then shortly thereafter, I was assistant manager. Um, and while I was assistant manager, um, learning all kinds of skills, how to build shows into the system and, work on seating plans and how much, seats cost in different areas and all that kind of stuff. Got to see so many incredible performers on the stage over the years, everybody from Tony Bennett to Diana Ross to, oh my God, who else did I see? George Carlin, The Temptations, Cyndi Lauper, um, and just so many artists who I love personally, like Bruce Springsteen, incredible. Like he is like my number one. I got to see a really special show where he and the band performed Darkness on the Edge of Town and Born to Run together in concert, the full albums. Uh, that was really special. Counting Crows, Ani DeFranco, got to meet Anthony Bourdain eventually at a meet and greet, Al Pacino, did a book signing, like all kinds of just amazing experiences there. Um, but while I was working in the box office, there was this new thing that came out called MySpace. Do you remember MySpace? You remember our friend Tom? Um, so MySpace was this new thing that everyone was talking about, and my friend uh was like, you have to sign up for MySpace. Like, this is so much fun. Oh my God, you have to do it. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. Like, that's weird. I don't want to like be obsessed with this online thing. Like, um, I'm trying to sell tickets to, this doo-wop show, okay? And eventually it just was like such a juggernaut. Everyone was talking about this thing. So I'm like, okay, okay, fine. So I sign up. Obsessed. Of course, I'm obsessed in like 3 seconds, right? We all were. Top 8, remember that? Um, And ooh, what songs am I going to put on my profile? And what little blog status update thing am I going to put? Blah, blah, blah. So we're obsessed. We're all adding each other and we're like exploring the beginning of social media, right? Well, after a few weeks of playing around and just loving this, I thought, hmm, I wonder if I can make a MySpace for the theater. And so I did. I didn't ask anybody, I just did. And I assumed it, as part of my, like, I figured, well, I'll just do this as part of my, like, box office, you know, management role. And so I made a profile, I uploaded the theater's logo, I linked to our website, got it all filled out with the information, put our phone number on there and our hours and all that. And I started building our events calendar on the MySpace page. And I would link out to the purchase tickets area and all that stuff. Now you have to understand, this was like not something people were doing back then. People were not using social media for business. I didn't know that or think about that. I just thought like, oh, this will be cool, and then I could like send this to people, like my friends. So I started doing that. And after a couple weeks, I started noticing people were reaching out through MySpace to ask questions about the shows or to leave comments or share it or, send us an email. Oh, I saw this on MySpace, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And it started to become like kind of a big deal. Um, and so I just started taking it even more seriously. I would share videos there, I would get all the information on there. And eventually, upstairs, the upstairs offices noticed. And, they reached out to me and they were like, hey, so like, what would you think about working in, marketing instead? What would you think about moving up here and working in marketing? I didn't go to school for marketing. I didn't have any experience with marketing, or so I thought, except I did. It was like organic experience. Um, and I was kind of like, I don't know, like I don't know anything about marketing. I don't know anything about budgets and all this stuff. And so anyway, we talked about it. Even though there was some pushback from the higher ups at the time who didn't really understand what MySpace was, like I did get kind of reprimanded at one point saying, we already have a website. Like, we don't need this. Now, the person reprimanding me was not the same person as who was offering me to come work up there. Different people. But after a little bit of communication and education, I had to explain, like, this isn't the same as a website. And that's the whole thing, like with social media. It's like social media allows you to be part of the conversation where the conversations are taking place. Instead of waiting for someone to find your website, waiting for someone to look you up on Google and spend time on your website, waiting for people to come to you, social media lets you go to the people. That was my thought. And once, I kind of explain that a bit more to the powers that be. They backed off and kind of let me do my thing. And then, like I said, they eventually they offered me this job upstairs. So I move upstairs. I worked in group sales for a short time. That sucked. Um, it's just like not very fun and I was good at it, but it wasn't the most creative thing. But I was learning marketing while I was doing that. Eventually became marketing assistant and was still continuing to do a bunch of these kind of creative social media type things. Twitter was brand new at the time, which I have obviously fallen out of love with now with whatever god awful thing is happening with that now. I haven't used it in a million years, but at the time it was brand new. And yeah, like Facebook was brand new. I don't, Instagram didn't exist yet. Like YouTube might not have even existed yet. But anyway, the theater started getting recognized for the fact that we were using social media for business. And so people started reaching out to my bosses saying, how do you do this? Like what is a Twitter? How do you how do you put stuff online like that? Who's doing that? And all this kind of thing. And so I started leading workshops for other businesses on behalf of the theater. They would come over and we would train them on how to get their stuff set up, or I'd lead, PowerPoint presentations and video presentations, showing them and teaching them about social media. And then eventually started doing that for like the state of New Jersey through some the governor's conference on tourism. I spoke at Atlantic City. I gave workshops to the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, Discover Jersey Arts, Art Pride New Jersey, various other organizations who were figuring out what I was doing and wanted to learn about this new thing called social media. And especially with so many of the organizations we were associated with who are nonprofits who have limited staff, limited funds, they were intrigued by social media. How do we use this effectively? What are some creative ways we can do it? Like, what should we be doing? What are some do's and don'ts? And I started to kind of make a name for myself on behalf of the theater, and showing these creative ways to use it and and how to think outside the box. Then eventually, I was writing some articles for the League of Historic American Theaters about the same topic, and so on and so forth. Eventually, the theater hired a Photoshop tutor for me, and I learned so much about graphic design, um, and really learned how to use Photoshop to create posters and ads and videos and all kinds of stuff. And then was kind of churning out all these assets all the time as a one-woman band of, with the new title, Multimedia Manager, which they had created that title for me. And this whole time, I'm expanding my toolbox. I'm learning. I'm trying new things with the theater, trying to lead the way, trying to be an example for other organizations and stuff. Um, and having so much fun doing it and getting such great experiences with so many amazing performers that were coming through. Long hours, a lot of work, all of that stuff. Nonprofit salaries are not very big. Um, and but it was so unexpected. Like I said, I did not go to school for any of this. It just kind of was falling in my lap, but also like growing off of my instincts and things I had tried, these little experiments I had tried that then took off and grew. And so I had worked there for about 8 years, and eventually um another theater down the street, Two River Theater, also in Red Bank, New Jersey, uh, they reached out to me because they were looking for someone to fill the new role of multimedia manager at their venue. And someone at the time who worked there had messaged me privately and said, just so you know, we made this position with you in mind. Which was very cool insider info. But I had to really think about it because though that was very flattering and, I really admired the work of Two River Theater, it was a totally different type of venue. They were a regional theater who did professional theater, so plays, mainly plays, some musicals. They also had a great education department, as did Count Basie Theater. I knew a bunch of the people who had worked over there, but it was like a season of plays instead of, one show after another, the way that it was at Count Basie Theater. Um, but I was very intrigued by going back to my roots a bit, like spending so much time in community theater, loving Broadway shows. Like I loved the caliber of talent that they were attracting from the city. And so I went for an interview and I had a really great experience. And I decided, I've been at Count Basie Theater for 8 years. I've honed my skills here. I've had a great time. Um, and I think I'm ready for something new. And so I made the shift and started working 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away, doing the same type of work. And again, just expanding on it as the years went on. At this point, Facebook was in full swing. YouTube was starting up, Instagram had just started, and there was just more opportunity with social media. And so Two River Theater then had me trained in Facebook ads, which was kind of like the next tool to land under my belt. I started working on uh website administration and making videos and email marketing, much more than what I was doing at Count Basie. And just working with uh the level of um artisans that they would bring in for the shows for sure, but also the my coworkers, like the production team or the production department, education department, and so on. Like everyone was at the top of their game, and I feel very fortunate to have worked there. Um, but it too was a nonprofit. So I was always looking for ways to, help with my income a bit. And so on the side, I started helping friends with social media projects, with designing logos, with, helping them with their marketing. And I was doing it for a little bit on the side, kind of a side hustle while I was working full time at the theater. And that went on for a couple years, but eventually, around 2017, I, 'cause I'd been at Two River Theater for probably 6 years at this point, 7 years at this point, something like that. And it eventually got to a point where I couldn't keep doing both jobs. I couldn't keep, doing my full-time job and my side hustle. I was too busy, which was a great problem to have, but also was kind of like, well, what am I going to do here? And for years, people were telling me, you should open your own business. Like, you should go into business, you should do this. And I'm like, what the hell are you even saying? Like, I have never wanted to open my own business. I don't know anything about that. I already told you guys I can't math. And like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what do you mean open a business? And I just like, with so many things, I make things much more complicated than they actually are. I overthink things and all of that. And I kind of had just talked myself out of it before it even started. And, it just was kind of a no, no, no. But like I said, I eventually, like when I was working on the side with this stuff, I never thought of it really as like a business, It was kind of like a side hobby that made me some money. But when I really started to think about it, talk with my brothers and talk with some friends, and I was like, well, maybe I really can do this. And I started researching a bit and like knew, okay, like I have to get an LLC, I need a business bank account, I need to figure out like taxes, I need a PO box, like kind of these basic starting kind of things that made it less complicated. And eventually I decided, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I have a little bit of money saved. They tell you, "Oh, like save up 6 months, if you're going to quit your job, blah blah blah." No, I saved up like 2, maybe 3. Um, but I just decided to do it. And so I gave extended notice. I think I gave a month's notice or a month and a half's notice to my boss. Um, and yeah, uh my final day of work at Two River Theater was late August 2017. And I have been full time in Alicia Yervis Creative ever since. And as I'm recording this today, it is November 26th, 2024. So I just passed 7 years officially full time. Um, and I'm very proud of that because if you're listening to this and you already have your own business, you know that it is an emotional roller coaster. But what you also know is that it is freaking worth it. It is worth it. And that's what keeps me going. And if you're listening to this and you haven't started your own business yet, just know it is worth it. It takes time. It is not all lollipops and rainbows, but I really believe that I won't work for someone else again. I mean, never say never. I get it. I get it. And I've just gone through a really, 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 really challenging couple years. Pandemic, blah, blah, all that stuff. Um, Feast or famine, you know. But things are starting to improve for me. And I am hanging on to that hope that they will continue to go up from here. But despite all of that, I still, I still want to do this. I still want to run my own business. I still want to grow my brand. And so that was a long story about my background. Um, but I say all of that because, if one thing hadn't happened, the other thing wouldn't have happened, you know? And I feel like this is what I was meant to do. Um, and though when I started my business, I was working with lots of arts organizations still, like because of my background, they would still come to me. They still do. Reach out to lead lectures, reach out for help with different things, hire me for different projects through my connections in the performing arts, and I'm so grateful for that. My business has morphed a bit to mostly be serving women in wellness businesses, health and wellness. I work with a lot of yoga instructors, acupuncturists, Pilates studios, therapists and counselors and coaches. People in that space have made up the bulk of my clientele, which is not something I planned for. It just kind of happened because of word of mouth. As I started taking on some web design projects or some branding projects, a lot of folks in those communities know each other and they would refer me, and that's how I've grown my business a lot that way. Um, but the other big piece of my clientele is still um, communities and individuals in the theater arts, performing arts. So that makes me really happy because that has led me to here. Um, and I'm really proud of the connections that I've made through there, including, which I'll talk about this in a future episode, but through my work and reputation through the theater world, I was hired to do creative direction and design for some cast albums um, for the Tony nominated musical Be More Chill. And that was a lot of fun. So much fun. I'm really proud of that project. And I just love that, though I'm doing my own thing now, the arts will always be part of my business. And like I mentioned in my trailer, everything that I've learned through my many, many years, 15 plus years working behind the scenes in the performing arts, um, it's taught me so much, and it's taught me to look at any project that I work on as a show of its own. And okay, what would be the things and the steps that we would take to promote this quote unquote show? And show can be your business, your event, your store, your product, your course, your class, your service, right? And that's the stuff I love talking about. That's the stuff I love helping you with. And because of my curly Q path, um, I know that it's possible to go your own way and do your own thing. You don't have to do what everyone says you should be doing because you don't need to should all over yourself. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast. I am figuring this out as I go. Like I told you, I don't have fancy equipment. I don't have any of that stuff. You might hear a dog bark in the background. You might hear an ambulance go by. I don't know. Um, but I'm really excited to finally start this. I thank you so much for listening and wanting to be part of this journey with me. Please subscribe. That would be awesome. And I think I want to hear from you, like what you want to explore on this show. What are the topics that interest you? What do you need my help with? What are some stories you want to hear? What are some guests you want to hear from? Eventually, I'll have guests on this show. The first couple will just be me, but I have a long list of folks that I've been keeping a notes list in my phone for years of when I eventually have a podcast, I want to talk to this person. Um, but I'll eventually have a way for you to apply to be a guest too if you feel like maybe you have a good idea for a show or, something you can talk about for a long time. And maybe you'll be a good fit to be a guest. That would be awesome. But the main thing I want you to take away is that I'm here to help you. I want this whole podcast to feel like we're sitting on the couch having our iced coffee in our pajamas, or maybe we're having some nachos, and we're just chatting about business. We're chatting about life. We're chatting about being creative. We're chatting about imposter syndrome, mental health, entrepreneurship, kind of a mixed bag of, all the things when you are a small business owner. Because I believe that the secret sauce to you finding your dream clients is being yourself in business, infusing your unique personality into everything that you do. Your marketing, your website, your social media, your emails, your branding, your video, your audio, everything should be you, fully you. I really believe that that is the key. That's what I keep hearing from my clients, from the people who have found me, um, and what I teach them so that the people find them and say the same thing, like, oh, I couldn't, couldn't wait to contact you because I really resonated with the look of your website. I really resonated with this reel that you put up on Instagram. Like, I loved your story on that blog. Oh my God, that happened to me too. Really being authentically you is possible in business because I believe that business is personal. It needs that personal touch. Your business needs your personal touch, like, period, end of story. Um, and do I have all the answers? No, I don't know what the frig I'm doing. Remember before I said, what? Open a business? Like, what are you even talking about? I don't know how to do that. Yeah, I still don't know what I'm doing, but I know more than I did. And that is progress. And we will take progress over perfection, like I said in the beginning. So I don't have all the answers, but I am here to figure things out with you and to just chat and to be here for you. So I'm really excited to get going with this. This has been officially my first episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I don't know how long or short these episodes are going to be. I'm not holding myself to any kind of standard. I'm just like, just get a couple out and go from there. And the other thing too is that part of the holdup with me launching this was like, well, what if I change my mind about the content? What if I change my mind about the title or the show art or the this or the that or whatever? I can change it whenever I want. That doesn't mean I don't start it. And so let's remember that too. Just start the thing. Just start. Like the best time to start something was yesterday, the next best time was today. And you don't have to get it right, you just have to get it going. So that is where I'm headed with sharing my messy, magical journey of this whole business. And I'm excited to have you here, and we will talk more in a future episode. Stay tuned. You can learn more about me at aliciayurvis.com. There's also a tab on my website for free stuff. It's aliciayurvis.com/freebies. There's a bunch of downloads and free tools and resources that'll help you in your business. I would love for you to grab those, help yourself to as many as you'd like. And I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And yeah, I will see you on the next episode. All right, we have made it to the end. Oh, and if you're still here, I have to tell you something real funny. So yesterday, I set out to record this whole first episode. Got everything set up, tested my microphone, my headphones, Zoom, laptop, whole thing, everything's good. I recorded a whole episode, no script. There's no script this time either. Recorded the whole thing. I was like, huh, I'm so accomplished. I feel great. Wow, finally done. And then I go to grab the recording from Zoom so that I can get it into my editor. And guess what? I never actually hit record. Yep. So I talked for an hour to no one and I recorded nothing. But you know what? As my therapist would say, let's reframe that. And so I have reframed it to say, well, that was my dress rehearsal. So taking a cue from the theater days, that is why we have rehearsal, folks. It was not a fail. It was just a rehearsal. Rest assured, this time I hit record. Okay, bye.